Hey, hello. Hey, hey, hey. Well, I think that some people are here already. Let's see. Hey, hey, hey. Hey, hello there. I see a small number of people. That's all good. Tell me where you came from. It looks like it's gonna be pretty cozy here, which is okay. Hey, I see the numbers have doubled. Hey, all right. I'll just make a couple arrangements around my workspace because there's too much sun, which is really strange in Scotland, I know, but it does happen. Okay, that should be much better. Thank you very much for coming around. My name is Wojtek Kutyla, and I run this thing called UX Booster, where I'm trying to do my best to explain to you what UX is about, how does it work, and what can it deal with. Today we're gonna have the last webinar in my series. This is to do with UX and careers and thinking about your future employment, things that happen in your careers. You can watch the past webinars on the UX Boosters YouTube channel. That one is going to be on the channel as well, but obviously being here today puts you in a position where you can ask questions and interact with me. So that's pretty cool. Thank you for being here. Before we begin, I just wanted to say a couple of things that are quite important. I'll switch to the slide view. Yep. First of all these things that I'm going to be talking about today, well, I can talk about them only from my own perspective, and I can, refer to some observations. But my experience of dealing with employment in UX, as much as it's quite extensive, it's only mine. These are the things I've lived through. These are the tips that I could have used or used throughout my career, not only as a person who was employed in UX, but also as a person who is employing people in UX. So therefore, we need to remember that whatever you hear today, you should really filter through your own abilities, your own context, your own ideas. It's really important to not take any of this as gospel, because nothing like gospel exists, and especially not in digital, and certainly not in UX. So just be mindful of that. Use whatever you want to use, get anything that you want out of it, take anything home, but make sure that you filter it through your own experiences. And so today, and by the way, hello to those who have joined us over the last few minutes, we're going to explore a number of things. First of all, I wanted to quickly compare UX jobs in the job market context. So to tell you what's the difference in between working for a small startup or a small organization and a large organization, what to expect. I'm going to touch on different types of things you can do in UX as well, but obviously that is a vast subject, and you can imagine that most of these things you might have heard about before. Then we're going to move on to notes on portfolios. Portfolios are always a very interesting subject, and I get a lot of mail from people, not only in the UK, but also from people who watch my stuff in Poland, asking me many questions about portfolios. So I'm going to clarify some of these things. And I also want to give you some little tips on how to make yourself more applicable to what market demands right now at the minute. I'll talk to you about the methods of finding a job, landing a job potentially, or maybe changing a job if you already have a work in UX, a job in UX. And at the end, I'll give you some practical tips to not get lost. And my intention is for this to take approximately 45 minutes, maybe of presentation, maybe less, maybe more, depends on how well it goes. And then we're going to have QA, questions and answers, obviously. If you want to ask anything in the meantime, just type it into a chat, and then I'm going to answer it either straight away if it kind of works this way, or I can always do that later at the end of the session. but I'll aim at answering all these questions. And yeah, that's us. So I think the first thing that I wanted to tell you, something that you should really remember, is that everything takes time. And this is something that's really quite important when we're thinking of approaching any kind of career change or moving into a new sector or even changing jobs. And I just want to say this because I get a lot of email and messages where people are disappointed with the fact that they've been looking for a job or for a nice, interesting position in UX for maybe half a year and they haven't found anything. Well, it's not easy. Today, the market is saturated and the competition is really fierce. So you have to be prepared for a certain period of time when you have to wait. And then obviously developing your career is going to take many years as well. It would be very hard to imagine to land yourself a dream job and a dream career and just basically start from the very top at the beginning. That's just impossible. It takes time for these things to develop. I think that the internet nowadays made us used to being very fast at everything and we expect results straight away, but that's just not going to work. At the same time, it's actually good. It works in our favor that everything takes a lot of time because we have time to react really. And it doesn't really matter whether you graduated with a diploma of a good university or done a boot camp. In both situations, you will most likely have to spend a little bit of time in on searching for that first job or maybe moving places and finding the one that you would really like. So just just to kind of set the scene, what I'm going to be talking about today are tips and ideas for changing jobs and moving positions within the job sector in UX. But just keep in mind that not everything happens instantly, and that's going to help you drive forward. So there are many types of UX jobs on the market. As you know, you would have heard of UI jobs and research jobs and content and IA and all these different things. But what's really important is that they do have labels that often are quite loose and we don't really know what they mean. And to be honest, usually it's just one big mix anyway. So in my experience, and I worked as a researcher, as a UI designer, information architect, I did some work as a UX manager as well. All these jobs actually at the very end are in some way involving, they involve, talking to users, conducting research, conceiving ideas on the basis of what you'll find. In all of these jobs, you'll touch on interface design at some point. It's impossible not to do that. There would be accessibility, inclusion, information architecture as well, and mostly working with people in collaborative settings. So, with stakeholders, with end users, usability testing. So practically speaking, strangely, all these labels I consider to be rather bland and outdated, and they don't really tell you much. This actually is one big mix, and it's worth remembering it because sometimes we think, oh, we can really do UX without, let's say, like with zero graphic design skills, or we can do UI design without any research skills, or we can do product management without any information architecture skills. And this isn't actually true. You have to understand at least these different domains to become a quite well-rounded UX designer. So it's worth remembering about this, because when you're thinking of looking for jobs, you will be, of course, finding jobs that mostly match one or two particular descriptions, but you can expect for your job to entail way more and to learn way more from it. Hi, Katrina. Hi, Victoria. And hi, Marek. All three people that have said something on chat so far. But of course, it's nice to have you all here and still very cozy. Only a small number of people, which is great because it's going to give you opportunity to ask your questions and get them answered. Awesome. So anyway, coming back to this, where we have different types of jobs, just remember that those labels aren't really that important. It's more important to realize what is it that you really want to do. And then, of course, there's a context of organizational setting. And if you work as a UXer, you might be working in consulting, agency, or software house, and all these other places. So I just wanted to kind of mention a couple of things about each one of them, which maybe will help you to find the place you like. Consulting is usually well paid, but it's actually quite hard to get into it just at the very start. and it requires working both strategically and on ground level. And that actually is quite difficult at the beginning. So I would not expect many of you getting into consulting at the start. However, that does happen, and it did happen to me actually. I started my UX job in consultancy. That was my first UX job, really full time. So it does happen from time to time, but it's rather unlikely it will just straight away. Obviously, you might go into an agency or a software house where it's actually pretty cool environment to learn a lot, because it's very, very fast and it's commercialized. So the goals are very well set. You will know what you're working towards. You will know what your deadlines are. Disadvantage is sometimes you will be building things you don't really believe in or even like, but you'll learn a lot. Research might be scarce, and you will quickly build expertise by going through just your own nose, or your own gut feeling. It's not for the faint-hearted, but starting in both of those can actually provide you with valuable experience for later. And in fact, I believe that every UX designer should have done some time, should do some time in either an agency, design agency, or a software house throughout their career, because that would help them understand how businesses work. Then, of course, there are large organizations from the private sector, which usually have pretty good structure around processes, which helps, and the environment is well configured. So, you know where to go, you know how to move around, and there might be career paths and mentoring options available. Things might appear very logical, but unfortunately, in my experience, what happens to large organizations when you're doing UX work there, it might actually be a very strange environment where all decisions are dictated upon you from somebody above you, and you have very little influence over actually changing things. So unless there's a bigger group working there of UX professionals, it might become rather hard after a time. Of course, the pace is usually quite fast as well, because large organizations in the private sector, that means a lot of money. So processes are like very tight. It could work for some. It did work for me, and it works for many, and it's worth trying, but it's significantly different from working in agency or a software house. Obviously, consulting you might do in both. And then you have public sector organizations, which are quite interesting, because there you'll often get to quite socially focused work, which is really nice. You might actually be able to really help people. However, what often happens is that these organizations are extremely burdened with bureaucracy, and UX maturity of those organizations isn't really high, which means that people don't often understand what UX is about and how does it come into play with software development processes. So that can result in a little bit of strangeness or friction. Well, it tends to be peaceful, and not very fast paced, which is useful, but it also means that for some of you it might be boring. However, it does often offer the advantage of safe employment. It's just safer to work in those places than in others. And then obviously you have freelance, which is what I do at the minute, and contracting, which is what I don't do, but some people like, where you go into companies working as a self-employed person and offering them your services in exchange for really good money. But at the same time, you have to take care of all your security, job security, and future contracts and many other things. Freelance is, of course, a bit like that, but you might work for different customers like I do right now. Now, these are things that are very, very interesting, and in my opinion, mostly freelance is actually the way to go, especially if you are not tangled in any relationship with, working relationships with other colleagues, or maybe not running a venture together, but just doing things on your own. But it's something that I would not recommend at the beginning of your career, because it's difficult, and you have to have a pretty good network. You have to be able to find your own clients, or clients have to be able to find you. That can get tricky, not impossible at all, and it can yield very good results, obviously financial as well, but it's hard work. It's not for everyone. Worth trying out at some stage of your career, obviously, anyway, just to make sure that you can, give yourself a try. And hello to those who have joined us over the last few minutes. I'm very glad that you came here. Okay, there might be some hybrids as well. Although we also call hybrid jobs, we call them now the jobs that are requiring us to work in the office and remotely and whatnot. But I think that when I talk of hybrids, when I'm thinking of hybrids, it's some sort of jobs that are like in between those like a consulting, maybe that's a bit of a hybrid, or somebody who works for different organizations at the same time, having two jobs or whatever. Long story short, is basically up to you to decide, but make sure that you understand that with the size of organization, things will change, or with the speed of delivery of products, things will change, and you might not find yourself particularly suitable to one or another environment. So you need to be able to make conscious choices. Now, what's really important in all of this, in looking for a job, is your attitude. I think it's important to understand ourselves when we're doing that. By increasing our chances, we can get better at looking for jobs that we really want to do. But to increase those chances, we have to understand what is it that we really want. So maybe spend some time, either tomorrow or whenever you can, on thinking about what attracted you to UX in the first place. Was it joy of working with computers or with people, or hope to design apps that all of us use, or money, or maybe just talking to people? And what's really important is to understand why you want to do this, because UX is often being sold as a job that's so it's some sort of incredible venture into the digital, where things are just amazing and it's very well paid, and you can do things that nobody else would be able to do, and blah, blah, blah. And partially, of course, it's true, because UX is a wonderful job and I wouldn't change it for anything else. But at the same time, it's also hard work. And because of the relatively low maturity level of the environment, you often are faced with very difficult choices or difficult conversations. But it's important to go into that battle with enthusiasm. The competition, as I said, is absolutely fierce, and you will be judged upon your ability of convincing your employer that you can do the job, and that you have to do with a smile. And as much as it sounds maybe a bit weird, well, you don't have to smile with your grin at people, but it only means that I think UX is a job full of energy, and to show that energy at your interview time or in your communication with your future employer is going to really put you ahead, is going to really put you in a higher seat, in a slightly better position, and perhaps increase your chances for getting that job that you want. If you struggle with this in a way, which is very understandable, because obviously situation isn't easy, to be looking for a job, to be changing your career, those things are very hard. Then think of the result of your involvement in the digital sector and UX in general, where you're going to be helping people solving the problems. And that's really something quite nice and optimistic. Not everyone can say that. So to be in that position and to understand that this might be the outcome actually should put a little bit of a banana on your face, hopefully. As I said, think of why UX, what are your values, all these things that I've been talking about in so many other places or writing about. Understand what is it that you really want to do with that new job. And that's something that you really should start with. And here we're coming to the portfolios, because portfolios are something that many of you are, building or constructing painstakingly, and or just have built in the past to be able to show them to your future employers. And many of these questions that come to me very often, I could summarize with a number of answers, and that's what I'm going to do right now. First of all, remember that your portfolio is your product. Okay, approach it with that UX mindset that you have. So think of people who are going to be looking at your portfolio. Think of people who are going to be reading it, maybe printing it. A lot of CVs are still being printed and read at a coffee break or whatever. So make sure that this is something that actually is accessible, informative, short, and it can be used by people who it is designed for. Your portfolio, and here's a big surprise for many, your portfolio is not for you. Once again, your portfolio isn't for you. Your portfolio isn't for me unless I'm employing you. Your portfolio is for people who are going to give you a job. And that is very important. These people are different than you and me. They have less time, they are stressed about different things, they maybe live in different places, they are just different people with different job positions, job titles, and different worries and expectations. So you shouldn't be treating them as yourself. And when you design a portfolio that you like yourself, that's a good sign, don't get me wrong, it's really important. But unless that can be efficiently used by those who you want to get to, then you failed. So Just think about it for a while. You are going to be a UX designer, and I understand that at the stage of designing a small portfolio, it may be a number of case studies or even something you came up with, you have some little understanding of the process. And if you do, then approach that process of building your portfolio with the same clarity. You need to know who is it for, how should it work, what do you want from it, how would you measure its effectiveness. It's actually a case study on your own. I'm yet waiting for someone who would build a portfolio and document the case study of building a portfolio within their portfolio. That would be pretty original, and I wouldn't be surprised if it does happen someday. So keep it short, keep it informative. These people don't have time. What's really important, in my opinion, and many other people that I know in the industry who are recruiting UX designers, and even from the perspective of myself recruiting in the past, and often being included in recruitment panels, is that your own initiative is way more important than any group projects from uni. I see many uni group projects in portfolios, and that's excellent, but that should not be the main driver of your portfolio because it doesn't really illustrate your involvement that well. So do have something that you can work on, like a little pet project that you can document in a portfolio like this and talk about that project and treat the uni time just as learning. And it's great, and obviously showcase it and talk about it, no problem, but don't make it the main thing. What's also really important is that your thought process is what matters, and all the kind of visualizations you can put together, all the dribble, all the kind of cool things you can put on screen, that's the secondary thing. What people want to know is how are you going through things when you're thinking about, doing work? How do you approach the problem? How are you finding a solution to a problem? This is really crucial. And then accessibility and information architecture and usability. Now, I see many portfolios that are actually neither accessible nor well designed in terms of IA, and not really usable at all. And if you are a UX designer, then you have to take care of these things. It's the same with your CV that should be designed in a way that's actually making it readable and accessible. So has all the things in place to be deciphered by screen readers and screen technologies. So just keep that in mind. Of course, it doesn't mean that everything has to be perfect because you're just starting. So nobody's going to be expecting from you that your portfolio is going to be like the most accessible, beautifully designed, visually designed, thing of beautiful information architecture. Nobody's going to be expecting that of you. That would be weird. But certain level of fidelity is something that can really put you ahead of competition. And whatever you do, spell check it and edit it, edit the grammar. Ideally, actually find somebody who's a content writer. And if your first language isn't English, then I would really encourage you to find not a so-called native speaker who works in the next department, but a proper content writer who actually lives and breathes in English, because that makes a huge difference. Find a content writer and run your stuff through them so they can check it for you. You can find people like this online. You can find it in your network, sorry. Just get access to them so you can basically test your portfolio and make sure that it's really well written. A lot of stuff that I'm reading isn't really that well written. And unfortunately, for those designers who are not native English speakers like myself, we just need to be able to reach out for that help, because otherwise, what we write might just not be ideal. Yes, I know it's another step in the journey, but it's really important to do that. So make it work, and make it look serious but organic as well. So don't use templates or anything like that. Just build it yourself, but remember about simplicity and easiness of use. At the same time, make it look serious, as I said. So refrain from using emoticons all around, or maybe things that would not make it look very mature, because after all, design is a serious job. So you want to be recognized as a person who can think about these things seriously. What's really important, as I summarized here, is your portfolio has to show your character and your ability to do work. If looking at your portfolio, a person feels like they really want to get in touch with you and offer you a coffee to talk to you about your work or your ideas for employment, whatever, that's when you manage to do the right job. And once you build your portfolio, send it around to your colleagues, to your friends, to people who might be in managerial positions at other companies that so they give you feedback, and they don't even necessarily have to be UX people, just people who deal with employing people, with employment. They should be able to give you enough information to improve what you already have. So keep those things in mind. That's quite important. Okay. There are some extra things I think that you can have, or you can try to do to put yourself ahead of the competition of other people. As I said earlier, work on a real world project of sorts, to get some experience, to put it in that portfolio of yours. It could be as simple as your neighbor who has a coffee shop and maybe building a website for them, or coming up with the idea for the loyalty program for coffee or something like that. But anything that will get you to the real thing. If you are on UX Booster mailing list, then you might remember Andy Loban, design director at FanDuel, who was talking in a little podcast I recorded. By the way, I'm going to come back to this idea, but later on. He was talking about doing this and how important it is for a person to be able to showcase that they've done something real. At the same time, obviously, think of business and how it ties to UX, and that's something that Andy is talking about as well, but I absolutely wholeheartedly agree with it. If you develop an understanding of economy, of a little bit of economy, and how the business works in conjunction with UX, and what are the business goals, and why does each company care about revenue and a couple of other things, this is going to really put you ahead of competition big time. A designer who knows how their craft fits within a large organizational setting is really a much better designer. Now, there's obviously accessibility, inclusion, and design justice. These three terms are really important for every designer, and keep in mind that you will, at some stage of your career, bounce off those ideas. So it's good to explore them as soon as you can, and you should be vocal about those things because they're really important, and they move the world. They're making a big difference. So if you have some understanding of these three subjects, and if you can illustrate that smartly in your portfolio or in your approach to interviews, to chat, then that's something that really makes you a much better candidate. If you can consider learning a bit about some web development technologies like HTML, CSS, JavaScript, you can try a couple of other things. This is really helpful in your job. It will help you talk to developers, it will help you talk to front-end and back-end developers and other designers, stakeholders, but generally it will make you a much more well-rounded designer. That technical background, you really cannot underestimate it. It will come to you big time. It will really help you big time later on in your journey when you're going to be involved in larger and larger projects, and it will give you an advantage over many other colleagues who won't be able to understand it that easily. So, people say, oh, should designers code? I don't know whether designers should code. I can a little bit and it helps me, but certainly designers should understand how code works a little bit. They should be able to read here and there and to understand what a developer is talking about when they talk about databases connecting to something with API. These things are really crucial. The same applies to general computing and technology knowledge. So, how does a computer work? How does it work with the mouse? What is a mouse made of and why is there a laser in it? And like, what is a hard drive and how does the hard drive work and what is an IP address? These things are actually important, believe me or not, because they are, in the long run, are actually establishing a more solid knowledge about computers in general. So it's really helpful if you can spend some time digesting these things. It's enough to watch 1 or 2 or 3 YouTube videos, or maybe look into insights of a computer once or twice in your life if you have the chance, just to understand a little bit, to put yourself ahead. And most of all, the kind of extra thing that you can do is you can research your workplace, your future workplace, and the competition. So if you are actually looking to apply for any job, so thinking of getting into a particular company, do your research and understand what is this company doing, where do they came from, who's the competition, what does the competition do. These things are really quite crucial. Now, there's a question from Arthur here. Maybe I'll put it on screen and I'll answer it right away because I think it's an important one. So Arthur's asking, what is better for UX portfolio and why? Whether it's his own hosting and my own domain, or rather Behance. or whatever it is the second choice better? So I would say it depends on what you have in it, Arthur. And it's really important how you structure information. For instance, services like Behance don't allow you to put a lot of text into a page with with your designs. They don't allow you to swiftly describe contents of what you have there. So I would actually, to be honest, I'm always up for your own domain and your own hosting. It doesn't have to be your own hosting, of course. It might be something like WordPress.com, or there's so many other options, or GitHub even, where you can build a simple website for free. But something with your own domain, something you can control, something you have full influence over, and something that allows you to structure information in the way that's easily digestible. Behance or Dribbble were never created for things that were meant to be anything more than videos or images. That's not the purpose of these services. So they just don't give you that whole quality of what you need for a portfolio. Think of that. There's another question here from somebody. Should the case study always be written in English? Obviously, if you are targeting English speaking on these audiences, yeah, absolutely, why not? If, on the other hand, you want to work in a place where English isn't the main language, the first language, then you might want to make a different choice. I think that your nickname suggests to me that you're coming from the country I'm from, from Poland, which is not a surprise. In which case, I would probably write in Polish, because that's the first language of everybody who lives there, and you can always demonstrate your English capability in another way. Or potentially, if you want to target, customers, not customers so much, but employers from outside Poland, just do it in English, especially as English becomes more widespread in Polish organizations as well. So I think you cannot go wrong here, really. There's something from Katrina, which I'll answer right now, and I'll get to the next slide. What is a good number of example projects, case studies to showcase in detail? I don't think there's a particular answer to this, Katrina, but what I think is that it's to do with quality, not quantity. And from what I've heard from my colleagues recruiting, into UX positions, or what I tend to look at myself when I'm involved in these processes, I don't have time to be looking at 23 projects in portfolio, for instance. I'd much rather like one which is really well described, because if you describe one process to me, and if I can make sense out of it, then this means I'm able to understand what do you represent, what can you do, and how does your work, so to speak, how does it speak for itself. And that's more than enough. I don't think it's anything to do with the number. Nobody's expecting a junior UX designer to have 20 projects in their portfolio. That's impossible. Even having 2 actually is a luxury at times. Well, sometimes it's a luxury to have 1, as you know. So if you only describe it well, that should be more than enough. Certainly quality over quantity. Right, so coming back to the slides, what's really important here is that not only everything takes time, as I said at the beginning, but it's crucial to have that evolutionary mindset, because development takes time, and what is important to you today won't be important to you tomorrow, and the other way around maybe. So you need to be able to recall your progress, to document your progress. Consider things like journaling, look into mentoring. I know it's super hard to find a mentor. I'm working on it, by the way. Maybe I can give you something that could be of use. But in general, be prepared to look at how were your skills or your attitude changing over time, because that will do a number of things. First of all, it will allow you to relax when you are stressed out, because you'll be able to look back at things you've done in the past and to actually appreciate how much you've done. But also you'll be able to reach out to older ideas or older concepts that might help you drive development forward. Or maybe even, for particular ideas that you did not employ on one project to now be used on another project. So, some sort of documentation of your journey throughout is really important. I do have my kind of design diary system that I've been, showing to people multiple times before, just a small diaries like that. I can never figure the side right, which one is right, which one is that. But anyway, small diaries like that. This one is the second one I have for 2020. I've been having them throughout years in different notepads, obviously. But I usually have maybe 4 or 5 of those notepads a year, and I take notes of everything I do every single day, just very briefly. It's not like a full diary where you write dear diary, da da da. It's just like, a brief overview. So I know what I've been working on, I know what went right, and I know what went wrong, and not very rigidly. I don't do that like every day, obviously, but this is helping me to stay on top of things. And when I come back to my diaries from like 5-6 years ago, then I can really figure out what were the things I've been doing and where was I. And sometimes I'm looking at something thinking, oh my God, back then I thought this is impossible, like those things were so hard, and now I'm doing things that are so much way beyond these things. Look how much I've developed my skills and how much I improved myself. And sometimes it helps me actually understand how could I solve a design issue that I'm having right now with something, looking at something back and understanding that back then this idea was really good and maybe I can adapt it to something else. So I'd really recommend that. But what's really important in all of this, to summarize that slide, is that I think, our nature is change, and the same applies to jobs and looking for jobs and changing, your career throughout lifetime, because what we like today, what we are good at, tomorrow might be an entirely different thing, not to mention that we have entirely different label. So, just have that in somewhere, in your head. And when it's to do with finding jobs, I have a number of things that I wanted to suggest or offer to you as an advice. And as I said earlier, feel free to ignore it, or just tweak it, twist it, change it. But these things did help me and helped many other people finding their jobs. So let's look at them a little closer. So the most important part of finding a job is building a network. And I'm serious about this. Like, that's the most serious piece of this whole presentation. Make sure that your network, whether it's LinkedIn, Twitter, or whatever you use for networking. In some countries it would be Facebook, but to be honest, thinking future proof, I would probably move to LinkedIn very soon, because that seems to be the dominating engine in majority of European countries and beyond right now. Connect with people, polish up your LinkedIn page, build a presence, start talking to people, talking groups. I would really encourage you to join UX Booster group that I've created today, by the way. So feel free to discover it on the UX Booster LinkedIn page. All these things are actually super important, because these contacts will give you jobs. Sorry, just have to take a note of something. Yep. So if you don't know anyone at the beginning, which probably is the case, or you don't know too many people, just start lurking around, looking at what people say, what do they do, and you'll find eventually a post or two where you can maybe contribute with something really, really tiny, or even ask a question that you're not sure about, and gradually build a presence in, online and offline events. When the situation eases, obviously with pandemic, don't do it right now, and there's no meetups anyway, but when it's all coming back to, when it's all going to come back to semi-normal, start going to meetups again and conferences, and contribute to those discussions with others, because that's really important. If you are scared by the lack of your expertise, which we often are, I mean, I have the same after so many years of doing this, then understand that nothing just happened overnight, and Rome wasn't built in a day, and there's always somebody that knows less than you. Seriously, I mean, that's tested and proven. There's always someone who knows less than you. And you might think that you are the least skilled UX designer in the world when you're trying to, find a new job, or maybe just even like start in UX altogether. But there would be something that someone wouldn't know that that you can give them as a kind of free gift, as help. And the internet is full of people who are less experienced than even what appears to be the least experienced UX person I know. So this is really, really important. Sharing that knowledge in a network provides you with the ability to find a better work, as I'm going to explain to you in just a minute. But post networking, very often what we do is we obviously look at ads, and and recruiters come to us with jobs. Sorry. And there are certain things that I would like you to become sensitive to when you are looking at this stuff, to not get yourself in trouble. So to judge maturity of an organization, whenever you're looking at the ad, see whether there's anything that screams at you that they don't know anything about UX. And those things can be, them just mistaking UX for UI all the time, or saying that they want a UX designer but talking about UI, or saying that they want a researcher but talking about something else, maybe front-end development. These things suggest that organization like this isn't really mature enough to host a junior and to give them education that they need. So be careful of that. Being the only designer in an organization, that's difficult, especially at the beginning, because there's no one to learn from, and it might be just tricky. Do they talk about products and services they worked on, those organizations? Do your research, see if you can find what they've been working on, whether you can actually get the feeling of it. Maybe it's a system you can even sign up to and try use for a while. This is very important, because it will allow you to avoid a situation in which you will land yourself in a very, very bad place, where nothing will be working and you'll have to be taking care of everything from scratch with no support whatsoever. Reach out to your network and ask for opinions about this or that organization, because there's always someone who would know, what kind of organization is it, what do they give you, where do they come from, what can they offer you, whether they are credible. So just keep that in mind, and always consider diversity. Will you be well supported there with your needs, with your ideas, with who you are? Can you have a successful job in there where you'll feel at home, when you'll feel welcomed, regardless of your abilities or or how you carry on with your life? That's really quite important, because some of these places are really mindless corporate gridlocks that can grind people to a little grains, or places where there's little empathy or compassion for individuals who are young and undeveloped, or just starting with little experience. So that's really important. Of course, it goes without saying that if you find during your research that the organization is controversial for whichever reason, and especially any ethical reason, then you probably shouldn't really be taking a look, because that's just a waste of time. But be mindful of these things, and look at salary levels as well, and do a comparison with other jobs. So before looking at ads, before looking at jobs, see if you can develop an understanding of how much a UX designer earns. And you can ask in your network, you can look at multiple reports that are published. Like, for instance, in Poland, there's an absolutely fantastic report published every year by a number of colleagues that deals with UX employment in Poland. And I'm sure that similar reports, for a fact, I know that similar reports are being created elsewhere. So it's worth looking at these things to understand what kind of salaries should you be expecting. If anybody asks you to do a pre-interview task, just look at it and see whether that's something that requires you to do a lot of work. And if so, then ask for compensation, because why would you be doing work for free? It's really unusual, or it's just not ethically okay to be asking you to do work for free. Of course, small things, absolutely fine. Yes, sure. I mean, a task that's going to take you 2 hours to do, some sort of like a test task. Yeah, sure. We all do that. You can do it at the time of the interview as well, maybe. But if it's a work that you need to spend a week on, and deliver high fidelity mockups to your potential employer, that signifies sort of a problem that they have, that they probably want you to solve. And if they don't want to pay for this, then just don't do that, because that's value your time. Essentially, that's what I'm saying. However, saying all of this, it's also worth remembering that getting a foot through the door might be worth a little sacrifice here and there. And at the beginning, you might want to accept a job that's maybe not paying through the roof, or maybe where the team is small, or maybe where, I don't know, you won't have a particular benefit, just for the sake of being surrounded with other like-minded individuals who are building digital products and services, and learning from them. That can really help. Whatever you do, just make sure that you're not putting yourself in a position where somebody can treat you like a slave being, because you're not. You have your value, you have incredible things you can bring to any company, as long as you are able to articulate them, even if this is something like your wit, your energy. Those are super important things, and you can be proud of them. So make sure that they are actually articulated throughout your portfolios and communication, and many other things that you are going to exchange with your future employer. But what I would really recommend doing is finding a job by yourself. So looking for organizations that seem attractive to you, and seeing whether you could fit within their team. My friend Neil Coleman, and I've been repeating this countless number of times, says, I don't believe in advertised jobs. Neil is a incredibly successful designer with years and years of career, and he's been recruiting people for a long number of years. He recruited me, and he knows his stuff. And I actually believe that this is true, that the best jobs are the jobs that are found through your network of contacts, peers and friends. And that's something that you will eventually arrive at. You'll see it, whether you like it or not, whether it's unusual, maybe it sounds weird, but that's eventually gonna happen, just naturally in your career, because you're going to be building a network, and that's going to put you in a very different position in years to come. So find a company that you want to work for and ask yourself, how could you contribute? What can I bring? What can I take out of that company? Do your research, see who's running this, who's running the gig, who's running the UX gig over there, what kind of products they've done. Find these people, find them on LinkedIn. Don't send emails to like jobs@companyx.com, because that's going to end in trash. Everybody does that. Find people on LinkedIn. Today you can do that, and basically contact them directly, directors of UX divisions, of UX units. If you have interesting portfolio, if you have something to show, if your LinkedIn thing is up to scratch, if you can come across as an enthusiastic and open-minded individual, okay, only 1 in 10 of those things will work, and obviously be prepared for rejection, but it will eventually bring fruit. I'll tell you a little story. A few years back, maybe 2 years ago or so, I was in Poland at a conference, and I was giving a chat that was somewhat related to the things we're discussing today, a talk on that, and a woman approached me. Her name is Katarzyna, Kasia, and she was really enthusiastic about this all and got really excited. And she said like she's gonna do some of that, it's gonna maybe help her find a job and all that. And she was really coming across as a quite determined person. And then just last year, I think, or maybe it was just at the end of last year, I've met her again in Poland at another conference, and she gave me a big hug, which was really sweet, because she said that she followed some of this advice and just kept grinding through those organizations that she's been finding interesting, and sending them mails, sending them emails, and like staying in touch. And eventually, after a long time, one of them invited her to do an internship, and as far as I know, after that internship, she actually got a job that she wanted. So this approach works. Yes, okay, it's not as fast as going with ads and whatnot, but certainly, if not at the beginning of your career, then later on, I would really recommend it over just looking at job boards and things like that. It's really going to put you ahead of the curve. And so a couple of practical tips for the end before we get to questions. So if you have any questions, just drop them into the chat, and I'm going to answer them after I explain what's on this slide. So first of all, think long term, but plan only short term. I mean, digital is changing so quickly that it would really be unwise to look at your career in terms of like 10 years goals, 20 years goals, and planning for those goals in the long run. That's impossible. We can only plan from day to day. And that's something that is really quite important. Just be in the moment and basically do your work today, do it now, and with your best ability, to the best of you can do. And then that's going to push you one step ahead, step by step. That's really quite important. And you need to be aware of your strengths and weaknesses. So like, what is it that you enjoy? What is it that you don't enjoy? What is it that you're good at? And what is it that you're not good at? One of the major problems that I see people have is when they come to an interview, and I've had a lot of those in the past, where I've seen people coming and looking to get employed. And when we were asking them as future employers, hey, what is one thing that you can do for us, like right now? What would be the thing that we can leave you with and just trust you to do the job? There were no answers. People were unprepared to handle the idea of one thing that they are great at. And that's very difficult, because if you don't know what you're really good at, then how can you do that job mindfully? And of course, when somebody isn't really very experienced, that very good might not be like incredibly well advanced work of some like highest standard. That's not the point. The point is to say, I really really love prototyping. I just love prototyping, or nothing really gives me that much pleasure at work as like to run a good research and do a good interview with a participant. This is what I love, and I can later like get all information I need from it. Those are the things that we need, simple things. Then the network, obviously, I explained earlier, sorry, participation in the community is crucial, and understanding of the market around you, like what organizations are there, who's employing, who's not employing, who's working where, what do they do, how do people flow between companies and organizations. This is really important because that will give you an understanding of the landscape around you, and when you know the landscape, you can speak its language, and you can move in between places, you can connect with different people when you need to. That also goes with being visible and showing interest in what's going on. So, for instance, you being here at this webinar is great. The knowledge that you get, carry it further, give it to people, point them at me, I'll point you at them, just work together with others, basically, to be able to form that image of yourself, of a person who's really curious and who's really engaging and who really wants to spend time with others. That's really important, especially in a domain like UX, when we mostly work with people. And then if you can document your progress, introspect regularly, retrospect, whatever you call it, look at things that you've done and draw conclusions from your behavior and see if you can change anything in your practice or in your approach to your career. What's really important when it comes to portfolios, just stick to thinking about it as an UX project, as about a UX project where things make sense for particular groups of people when they are designed to support particular interest. That's really gonna help you a lot. Okay, people. So this is the time when I get a sip of my water and we get to 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Tell me if you can hear me. This is the message from the higher intelligence. Hey, hey, hey. Okay, I think you can hear me. I have no clue why you cannot see me. There's something wrong with my cam. But I'm gonna answer your questions anyway because I'm hardcore. So hopefully that's gonna work. And if we fail, and you get bored of just seeing that symbol in the middle of the page, just leave, and I'm not gonna be angry at you. I'm really sorry about those technical difficulties. I don't know what's going on. Seems like both my webcam and my mic have packed up. Really don't know. So I'm just gonna basically talk to you. So here's a question from Katrina. How do you go about getting into freelance and starting your first projects and contracts? This is a very interesting question, Katrina, and I think the most important bit here is to prepare yourself for it. So for me, it started with building a really strong network of contacts and getting in touch over the years with different people who might then, in my mind, I was thinking become my future customers. Some of them did. But most of all, it was also to do with securing myself financially enough for a number of months at the beginning, because that can get really, really difficult when you have no work at the start. Luckily, I was able to actually find some contracts just at the beginning, and those allowed me to actually move into freelance swiftly. But if I didn't have that, I also was secured enough to just go for 3 or 4 months without pay, which is really crucial. But I think that at the beginning, it's very difficult to do that at the beginning of your career, because that network is the key, and also the trust that you build in professional circles, in your your persona. Sort of, you need to be able to build credibility. Otherwise, people obviously won't want to work with you. So yeah, preparation is the key here. Certainly, preparation is the key. Okay. Is there anybody else with any other questions? I'm more than happy to answer. Zygmunt, you've asked whether this has already started. Yeah, kind of. It's ending right now, but feel free to ask anything, and I'll see if I can answer it. Obviously, as you notice, we have some technical difficulties. You can see me, probably for good, actually, but you can hear me even if it's a bit scruffy, so that's not too bad. Okay, any other questions? Technology is disappointing. You can see me. We need to. Okay, I don't see anything else from you. Right, that's okay though. Listen, people, what I want to say is that if you have any questions or anything like that, feel free to reach out to me at uxbooster.com. You can find my details on the website. You can just send a question through the form. You can basically interact with me on LinkedIn. Today, I've established the first sort of, the UX Booster group on LinkedIn. I'm gonna paste UXBooster.com group. You can basically, join the LinkedIn group. I'll let you in, and we can start talking about stuff that you find interesting. And yeah, just see if you can help others as well. So this isn't just about me. I don't want to make an impression that I'm doing it to to gain some credibility or whatever. Probably partially it's also important, but I would like to help you, and I would like you to be able to help others, which is really crucial to me. Now, this unfortunate, technically challenged webinar is coming to an end, but it was great to see you. And I hope that we'll stay in touch. Sign up to my newsletter, look at the other webinars on YouTube, and yeah, have a wonderful, wonderful evening. Enjoy your UX jobs when you get them, and if you are in one of them right now, then look at it in a new light and see whether there's anything you can improve, you can change, and maybe soon you'll find yourself in a very different place. Thank you very much. Once again, apologies about the boo-boos, and we'll be in touch.